One of my favourite writers, C.S. Lewis, describes the incarnation this way. He writes, "Lying at your feet is your dog. Imagine for the moment that your dog, and every dog, is in deep distress. Some of us love dogs very much. If it would help all the dogs in the world to become like me, would you be willing to become a dog? Would you put down your human nature, leave your loved ones, your job, your hobbies, your art and literature and music, and choose instead of the intimate communion with your beloved, the poor substitute of looking into the beloved's face and wagging your tail, unable to smile or speak? Christ, by becoming man, limited the thing that to him was the most precious thing in the world, his unhindered communion with his Father." So do you see where Jesus has given you freedom? You know, you came in here this morning free to worship him. You came in here free to open the Bible and read from it. Your spiritual freedom comes from Jesus, even if you can't be here right now. No one can take your freedom to make your spiritual decisions. They're completely granted to you by Jesus. We have been given grace upon grace. So why did Jesus put on human flesh and enter our world? And I believe it's because of his great love for us. And how much does he love us? Well, he loves us so much that he put on that human flesh. He put it around his eternal glory and he entered our world. He left the splendour and the majesty that is heaven, and he entered a cattle trough in Bethlehem to pursue us. If we ever doubted his love for us, then all we have to do is to remember the cradle into which he was born. It's the evidence that he was pursuing us. He desired to give each of us a new spiritual birth. He came to make us children of the King of the universe. That's why he came. The Father knew that the best way to communicate with a bird was to become a bird. And the best way that God could talk to and interact with humans was to become a human. So the Father asked the Son to put on human flesh and become one of us. Through Jesus, we too can know the true God and who he is. We can begin to understand his eternal plan for our life. You know, Christmas is partly about receiving presents. But consider how challenging it is to receive certain kinds of gifts. Some gifts, by their very nature, make us swallow our pride. Imagining, if you will, imagine opening a present on Christmas morning from a friend and discovering a dieting book. Ouch. Then we take off another ribbon and another wrapper and find it's a book from a different friend entitled Overcoming Selfishness. If we say to each of them, "Thank you so much," then we are, in a sense, admitting, "I am indeed overweight and obnoxious." In other words, some gifts are hard to receive, because to do so is to admit that we have flaws and weaknesses and we need help. Perhaps on some occasion, we've had a friend who's figured out that we were in financial trouble and who came and offered us a sum of money to get us out of our predicament. And if that's ever happened, you've probably found that to receive the gift meant to swallow some pride. There's never been a gift offered that makes us need to swallow our pride more than the gift of Jesus Christ. Christmas is our annual indicator that we remain lost and that we're unable to save ourselves, that nothing less than the birth and death of the Son of God himself was going to save us. Which means that we're not somebody who can pull ourselves together and live a moral and good life without the support of Jesus Christ. We're in a lost state without Jesus. Jesus is our hope, and Jesus is our future. He is our very refuge and our strength. And such words are found in Psalm 46. I love that. And I love the hymn that it's put to with the Den Busters tune that tells us, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, and she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, be still. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations, and I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. This same God of Jacob is the same God who sends Jesus. And this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world, that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. And since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another as we are called to do, God lives in us, and his love is made complete through us. He is full of grace and truth. And I don't think that we should ever place either grace or truth above the other. I think that they're to be held in perfect tension in our life. Jesus is grace and truth. And that's what our text this morning is telling us in verse 14, where we read those ever so familiar words. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Grace without truth becomes a sloppy, mushy kind of love. Something like a river with no boundaries. Appropriate this morning. It produces a festering swamp. But truth without grace becomes rigid judgmentalism. Your soul will die and never get a chance to flourish. We are called by God to always seek both grace and truth. And please know that Jesus not only wants to give us grace upon grace, but the love he wants to place within us is limitless. It's beyond anything that we could ever hope for in this world. Today, right now, we are called to live in his grace and truth. Even if we've been mistreated or we've been taken advantage of in this life, we are to know that truth will prevail. All will one day be held accountable for their actions. And he oversees all of human history. No one gets away with anything. But we have to trust in his perfect justice. So let your heart be filled with grace upon grace. Know the extent the Father pursues you with his love. He yearns to be one with you forever. He wants to be linked with your heart for eternity. He loves deeply those who love him. And know this too, even if you try to push God away for whatever reason, he never ceases pursuing you. He's always there with grace. He loves you that much. 1 John 4, verses 9 to 12 tell us, this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. The proof of his love can be found in the cradle in the stable. He came for each of us. He put on human flesh and he pursued us. Athanasius, Bishop of Alexandria, puts it this way. Some may ask, why did he not manifest himself by means of other and nobler parts of creation, such as sun or moon or stars or fire or air, instead of mere human? The answer is this. The Lord didn't come to make a display, but he came to heal and to teach suffering people. For one who wanted to make a display, the thing would have been to just appear and dazzle the beholders. But for him who came to heal and teach, the way was not merely to dwell here, but to put himself at the disposal of those who needed him. Christ at our disposal? Yes. Yes, indeed. Christ left his eternal communion with God the Father to come to us in human form, that he might reveal himself to us in a way that humanity could understand. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Does that change your view of Christmas?